In this episode of Ottawa Business Journal's Behind the Headlines, a $250 million residential real estate deal sets a record, maybe. Our legal expert shares tips on how employees need to be treated during the upcoming federal election. And Carleton University opens its new $65 million home for the business school. All this coming up right now. Behind the Headlines is brought to you by Nelligan Law, Ottawa's fierce, proven, and human law firm. Visit them at nelliganlaw.ca. Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines for the week ending September 13th. I'm Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. Behind the Headlines is a regular podcast from OBJ to explore the biggest headlines in local business. We're changing around the format. If you didn't catch the last show, we're going to have still one of my colleagues from Ottawa Business Journal, David Sali, in the first segment. We'll talk about a big local business headline. The second segment will remain unchanged with our expert from Nelligan Law. The third segment is what's changing. We're going to have a newsmaker of the week. And this week, we get to speak to the dean of the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University that just opens its new business school. Very exciting. And we'll be speaking with Dana Brown in just a few minutes. But let's go first to my colleague at the Ottawa Business Journal, the one and only David Sali. There he is.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing, Dave?
I'm not bad. How are you?
Good. Listen, we got a great story to talk about today. I mean, we always do, but this one has a big number. We know the business audience like big numbers, so this is a big number, $250 million.
Yeah.
So, Dave, you're going to break it down here for a minute, but I'll set it up. So, this is a 3-building rental apartment complex in Westboro, and it sold for $260 million. And we think it might be the largest residential real estate deal in Ottawa history. Tell us about it.
That's right, Mike. And don't shortchange it. 267 million.
Okay, 7 million.
That extra, yep. Yeah. Because every dollar counts when you're chasing a record. And this one looks like it is a record. At least that's according to Nicol Building of CBRE's Ottawa office. They're the firm that brokered this historic deal. It actually took 3 of their offices, Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal, working together to get this deal done. That's how big it was. So this was as we said, a historic deal. The buyer is Homestead Land Holdings. They're out of Kingston, and they already own a couple of dozen properties in Ottawa, along with dozens more across the province. And so they finalized the deal for the 3 buildings, 185, 195, 200 Clearview Avenue. That's just west of Island Park Drive. So this is a big apartment complex. We're talking 642 total suites, along with 2 commercial units. Now, history here, because as Nicol told me recently, like, it is just very rare, Mike, that you would see a properties of this scale ever come on the market in a place like Ottawa. We have a pretty controlled market here, tightly controlled, as Nicol mentioned, and so you're not going to see 3 high rises of this magnitude change hands very often, obviously. And this is part of Homestead's play to kind of expand its footprint here in Ottawa. They've also recently filed an application to build a 25-story apartment tower with 235 units near Baseline in Greenbank. They already have a couple of other buildings around there. So clearly they're wanting to go big in what they think is going to be a big bounce back for the Ottawa rental market. Certainly Nicol Building thinks so. He told me that CBRE started marketing the Island Park Towers, as they're known, back in May. And he said the properties were hotly pursued, as he put it. They got multiple bidders, and he just said that's a testament to the strength of the Ottawa residential market right now. And it's interesting because, of course, as you know, Mike, last year wasn't great for the rental market in Ottawa with the pandemic. 2 big groups that are normally pretty steady reliable renters, students, and new immigrants. Well, there weren't many of those coming to the capital or to many other Canadian cities for that matter last year. So that caused a little bit of a dip in the rental market for sure. We saw that in the earnings reports from REITs like Minto and Interrent. They had a down year in 2020, but the general consensus seems to be that things are ready to bounce back. That this isn't going to last. This depression, if you will, in the market isn't going to last very long. Students are already coming back, as I saw on Carleton's campus the other day, and immigration levels are probably going to start creeping up again. So the rental market should be ready for a bounce back. And Nicol also mentioned to me as an aside that the commercial market is actually looking pretty good as well. He's got CBRE has several big office deals in the works. He says one that's got a bigger dollar value than the Island Park residential deal.
Wow.
And he said it's going to be a bit of a sleeper year on the commercial side of things as well, Mike. So yeah. So generally speaking, there's quite a bit of optimism right now out there.
Yeah, I think you could say that Homestead making this purchase is a vote of confidence in the local economy. And I heard what you said, that during the pandemic, the market would have been a little bit soft for mostly external reasons. I think you're right. Students and new arrivals or immigrants to Ottawa. But before the pandemic, of course, Dave, I mean, people were almost calling it a rental crisis. Like,
Yeah.
The vacancy rate was way below 1%, and we're hearing all these horror stories. So, even if that loosened up a little bit, I think Homestead's going to do pretty well with those properties.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dave, for that reporting, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Keep up the good work, Dave.
All right. Thanks, Mike. See ya.
So it's time to check with our legal experts from Nelligan Law. Please welcome Denise Deschenes, an associate with the lawyers with the firm's employment and the labor law practice. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I'm eager to explore this. One of the things I like about employment law is there are all these little rules in employment law that employers should know about. And here's a rule that I didn't know about. So, Denise, we have a federal election coming up. And as I understand it, employers are required to give employees time off to vote. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head there. We have a federal election coming up in just a little bit over 2 weeks. So it's very important for employees and employers alike to be aware of the general rule that employees are entitled to 3 consecutive hours to go and cast their votes.
So it's 3 consecutive hours, and I presume it's on voting day. Are there other regulations or details that employers should know about?
Absolutely. So yes, it's on polling day. The employer has to provide you with those 3 hours, but those 3 hours, they have some latitude around when they're allowing their employers to go and cast the vote. So if your working hours are simply not allowing you to go and cast your vote at the same time as the polls are open, then your employer needs to be accommodating that. There are very specific exceptions. So this rule applies to all employers, but there are exceptions if you're employed in the transportation industry.
I was just going to jump in and say, so as I understand it, Denise, you're the expert, I'm not. This is kind of a Federal Elections Act regulation, but I'm just wondering, that's a federal law, and there are federally regulated industries, and then there are provincially regulated industries. But I think what you're saying is this applies to all private companies and organizations, nonprofits, government agencies. It's across the board.
Right. So the piece of legislation, you're right, is a federal one. So it's the Canada Elections Act. And that provides for those specific rules about employee entitlement to go and vote on election day. So it applies to all employers, again, with the exception of people in the transportation industry. But 4 very specific criteria need to be met if you're going to disallow an employee in the transportation industry to take their time off to vote.
Okay. Well, listen, you learn something every day, Denise. It's fascinating. This is why I like employment law, and it's exactly why people need people like or firms like Nelligan Law to give them good advice. Thanks for being here, Denise. I appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me, Michael.
Thanks to Denise Deschenes from Nelligan Law for that expert legal tip. So remember, you need to give employees 3 consecutive hours off to vote in the upcoming federal election. So now it's time for our newsmaker interview, one of the new segments on Behind the Headlines. And I'm particularly excited this week because this next story is a big deal. In fact, I think it's the beginning of a new era for Carleton's Business School. I'm very pleased to welcome right now the Dean of the Sprott School of Business, Dana Brown. Welcome, Dana.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today.
It's entirely my pleasure. So, Dana, listen, you guys just opened a new $65 million business school called the Nicol Building. It's so exciting. It's been a long time coming, Dana. Kind of walk us through, the somewhat long period of time to bring us to this point.
Yes, it has indeed, but it certainly is an exciting moment. Throughout its history, the Sprott School of Business was based in Dunton Tower, which meant that we were dispersed as a faculty and as a business school across a building and with other faculties, and our students were studying all across the campus. So in that environment, it was really hard to build a community. And the new building, it came as an idea probably about 5 years ago. And since that idea was formed, it's been developing. We've been working very closely with Hariri Pontarini, the architectural firm, to build a building that really embeds our values and expresses our ambitions as a business school.
And I had an opportunity, Dana, to tour the building just a few days ago with you.
Yeah.
It's spectacular, and both from an architectural point of view, from just a general amenity point of view. And I know this is a tough question because we're doing this both on a video podcast and some people are listening audio, but describe this new $65 million building for us, please.
Yeah, I think the architect described it best when he called it the design a warm embrace. So the building is actually circular in its design, and the circular design allows us to see one another as a community, right? To see what's going on in the building and to get a sense of being part of something bigger. And that's really the beauty of the design. So you walk into the building, you enter into a foyer that is round and circular and open. You see an open staircase that's leading up to a lot of open spaces for student collaboration and student learning.
It seemed very flexible to me. I mean, and that's probably the type of building you need these days. We're in a little bit of uncharted water, and that actually leads into my third and final question, Dana. So there might be people watching saying, "Well, listen, Dana, we're living in a virtual world. Why do we need a $65 million building?" What would you say to that?
Yeah, well, I think, this building actually was designed and conceived prior to the pandemic, but I actually think it meets exactly what we need right now in higher education. We don't really need more closed wall learning in higher education. We need communities of learners who can collaborate, who can problem solve, who can work together. And in order for that community to form, you do really need some dynamic spaces where people can meet. This isn't a 9-to-5 office building. This is a building that brings people in. It brings our students together, our faculty, our staff, members of the community, and business leaders are welcome in the building to start to look to the future. And that's what I really love about this space.
And one of the things I noticed, by the way, Dana, was some very high-tech cameras and lighting and boards and audio equipment. So it really kind of is equipped to be, a broadcast center, an e-learning center, if I could put it that way, to a much broader community than simply the people inside a building.
Yeah, absolutely. All of our rooms are geared up to do what we call high flex learning. So we'll be able to broadcast out. We'll be able to bring more people into our learning community in that way. So that's another aspect of the space that really makes it suitable to this day and age.
And I know it's not really possible at this time when we're hopefully at the tail end, hopefully, of a pandemic. But you are keen to get the business community into the new building and to host events and to engage with the business community inside the building.
Absolutely. Inside the building and outside the building. We want the students to be in and out, and we would love the business community to be in and out as well. So we will be inviting the business community to come in for a variety of different events. Within the building, we've opened Carleton University's Innovation Hub, the first innovation hub that the university has had, serving all of our student community. And there will be a great opportunity for businesses to engage with us and with the talented students we have here through that.
Dana, congratulations on the new building. So exciting.
Thank you so much. We're excited too. And thank you again.
That was Dana Brown, the Dean of the Sprott School of Business. And that brings us to the end of this episode. I want to remind everyone, you can watch this episode on YouTube. You can also listen to it on all major podcast studio platforms, Apple, Stitch, Google, so on and so forth. I also encourage you, if you're really interested in local business news, to visit our website regularly. That's obj.ca. You can visit it 24/7, of course, and get new headlines. And also, if you don't ever want to miss a story, the thing to do is to sign up for OBJ Today, which is a weekday email newsletter. You can go to obj.ca/newsletter/sign up. Thanks for tuning in. That's all the time we have for this week. So on behalf of my colleague David Sali and all the guests and sponsors for this week's episode, thanks for tuning in. Be safe and hope to see you real soon.